So why should you care about what I'm about to say? I joined NASA back in 2018, was my first track day. I worked my way through HPDE and into time trial. Then I got my MSF and became a driving instructor, or as we like to call them, a coach. And I worked primarily with HPD 1 students at first, which is the newest drivers. And then for a while, I worked a lot with HPD 2 drivers. Occasionally, I would be asked to do check rides for drivers that wanted to go from 2 to 3 and things like that. So a little bit more advanced drivers. I do have experience being in the car with different levels of drivers and a wide variety of different cars. The very first car that I was actually ever in was a mid-2000s Lamborghini Gallardo, which was one of the cars that I remember most vividly from when I was a kid playing like Need for Speed Most Wanted. I've been old school like air-cooled Porsches, and I've been in, new Mustang Shelby GT500s and stuff like that. And from people that, honestly weren't even old enough to hold a driver's license and got permission from NASA to actually drive with the organization, to guys that maybe they did autocross in the 90s and now they're retired and they're just doing this for fun. But across all those different types of drivers and cars, time and time again, we usually see some of the same issues pop up, and we're constantly correcting the same issues. So I want to share those things with you today so that you can be conscious of them, and maybe you can actually work on these things a little bit on the road. So then when you go back to the track or you do your first track day, maybe you don't have these issues or you're able to fix them more quickly. The first issue that we don't see with every driver, but when you do see it, it's very noticeable. And that is the student that is more worried about getting to the next level than they are about actually becoming a better driver. What people have to understand is if you want to go fast, you don't do that by just flooring the accelerator.
Now, what do you do next?
Floor it?
Yes. No, don't floor it.
Floor it?
No, don't floor it.
Okay, floor it!
No!
You have to learn where your marks are. That's going to be where you want your car placed on the track when you track in, where your apex is, and where you're going to track out. And then you work on your braking into that point, your acceleration out of that point, and everything in between. Anybody can hold the wheel straight and hold the accelerator flat to the floor. We're not interested in that. What we want to help you do is everything in between that allows you to increase that top speed where it actually matters, to prioritize the corners, and then ultimately you'll get faster lap times. Don't be so worried about every little thing that you're supposed to do to get to the next group. We just want you to become a better driver. We want you to learn, and then naturally you're going to get to that next level. I can make a whole video on what you need to go from HPD 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so on and so forth. But honestly, a lot of HPD 1 just comes down to safety. So don't be worried about how fast you're going, your lap times, who you're passing, anything like that. If you know where the flag stations are, you're doing proper pit procedure, you have good control over the car, and you're actually listening to your instructor, taking feedback well, those are more important things than how hard you can push down on that accelerator pedal. The next thing is something that is really important regardless of your skill level, even if you're a Formula One driver, and that's your vision, or how far you're looking down the track. The best students I've ever had with this were motorcycle drivers, and when we're driving on the street in a car, we have a tendency to look at the rear bumper of the car right in front of us. This is something that can really help you on the street, especially on the interstate during rush hour, if instead of you look at the car right in front of you, you acknowledge that car, but you're looking through that car and you're looking far down the road. You can see all the brake lights of cars a mile up ahead and know whether or not you need to slow down or not. You can actually increase your following distance in a lot of cases and not have to use your brakes nearly as often if you use this technique. And when someone is hitting their brakes farther up, even if the person right in front of you hasn't touched their brakes yet, you know that you're about to slow down, because eventually that's going to go car by car by car, and you won't be surprised when the person right in front of you suddenly slams on their brakes. But ultimately, this comes down to a lot of psychology and stuff too, and just how the brain works when you're looking through the apex, your hands are naturally going to turn the steering wheel and the car is going to go exactly where you're looking. So if you're looking far down the track, that's where you're going to go. If you're looking at the rear bumper of the car right in front of you that you want to get out of your way, you're going to go into his rear bumper. So this is something very important to know, and especially when you're driving in the rain, don't be staring at the car in front of you, because if he spins and goes off the track, you're highly likely to spin the exact same way, doing the exact same thing. And then when you go off the track, you're going to go in the same place and you're going to hit him. So this is something that is not just a safety thing. It's going to help you go a lot faster. And again, regardless of who you are, if you're Max Verstappen, you're utilizing this technique to the fullest. In my video on how to prepare for the track, I talked a lot about your mental preparedness for the track. Not just your car, but about you. And a reason this is very important is there are drivers that will completely forget to brake at all. One particular example comes to mind. We had a brand new student. He seemed a little bit unprepared and maybe just a little bit out of it. And later when we were on the track, I think he struggled a little bit with just being disoriented with how many turns there were on this course. There was a corner that is a lot sharper than it looks. It's not a particularly high-speed area of the track, but he just simply didn't brake, or he didn't brake in time. And by the time that he did, to my understanding, all of the assist in that car started kicking in. It was a newer BMW, so it had great traction control, stability, ABS. All of these safety features started kicking in, off, trying to save the car, but ultimately physics overcame it. You had a lot of momentum going this direction, and when you turn the wheel this way without slowing down, the car is ultimately just going to keep going. That car ended up going into the tire barrier. Luckily, neither the driver nor the instructor was hurt, but it was a very unnecessary crash that could have been entirely prevented. It's very important to just be prepared before you go into this. Whether or not you're going the speed that you want or you're braking as late as you want, keep a reasonable pace. And even if you are not braking the hardness or where you want or anything like that, at least be building up that repetition of like, hey, every time I get to this corner, I need to slow down and be touching the brakes. Eventually you'll get there, but don't just flat out forget to brake. We get that if you make a mistake, you might be overwhelmed and overthinking about it, but it's very important to just kind of let that go. Worry about next time on the next lap when you go by there, and focus immediately. What's ahead? What do I have to do now? Don't let it get to you and throw off your entire lap. Let it be in the past. There's nothing you can do about it, and fix it next time you come around. This fourth thing is something that I personally struggled with quite a bit, and it's shifting way too much. This is something that doesn't affect everybody, but there are a lot of people that, especially they're not even going at pace, and they want to shift down into gears that they don't need instead of building up the speed in the gear that they're already in, or maybe they're short shifting into higher gear that's really not even necessary. I get that some people are worried about wear and tear on their car, and maybe they don't want to be redlining their car around the track at every single moment, but I get it, especially if you have a manual transmission car and that shifter feels really nice. You're excited to be out on the track, you want to shift a lot, it sounds good, but something you have to think about is every single time that you downshift, you're going to have to upshift again eventually. So every one shift that you make, you're creating two shifts for yourself. I actually hired a driving coach for myself one time when I felt like I really hit a wall and I just need someone to push me over and to the next level. One of the first things that coach had me do was he had me remove 2 downshifts. Removing those 2 downshifts meant that I was bogging the car just slightly in those 2 areas. But he told me as I got better elsewhere that I eventually would have a high enough RPM that that lower gear really wasn't worth the shift. What he was also doing is eliminating 2 additional upshifts. So he was eliminating 4 shifts in total. Great exercise to do if you're struggling and catching yourself shifting too often is a lot of tracks do not have slow spots that are so slow that it's going to bog your car down if you're in 3rd gear. And a lot of straights might have a street car at 110, 130 miles an hour. So in 3rd gear in most cars, even if you have to go a little bit slower in the straightaways, You can honestly drive an entire lap with just third gear. So that's a great exercise. Leave your car in third gear for just one full lap and just drive all the way around, even if you slow your pace a little bit down in the straightaways, and just kind of feel the car without having to do any shifts. You'll kind of find that in some of the corners where maybe you are struggling to get that clutch and to pull it down into second gear or something like that, that it actually feels a lot more comfortable just leaving it in third gear, and it's a great mental exercise to kind of break that habit. The last thing I want to talk about, which is probably the biggest thing that we do as instructors, is managing overconfidence or underconfidence. Some people come in and they think that they know everything, and these people are going to be the same people that are overly worried about progressing to the next level. Some guys put a lot of time and effort into working on their car, and I appreciate that. I'm a car guy. I think mods are cool, but I'm not here for a car show. I'm here to help you become a better driver. I had a guy that was maybe a little bit overconfident. He was getting red mist, and it got to the point where he was cutting off of the corner as if he was making a straight line from him to the car in front of him. As soon as we got that student to kind of calm down and gain some self-control back, he did a lot better. It's your consistent, smooth driving that allows you to catch someone in the first place. So when it comes to trying to pass someone, don't throw all of that out the window. Keep doing exactly what you're doing, and you're going to get by them. There's also underconfidence issues. We've had people in slower cars like a Civic Si compared to a Corvette or something like that that might have 500 or so horsepower more. It's very easy to, what we say, drive the mirrors, where you're looking in the mirrors just as much, if not more, than you're actually looking through your own windshield. You're worried about the people behind you more than you're worried about driving your own car. One thing that I recommend to people, regardless if they have overconfidence, underconfidence, if they're fast, if they're slow, compared to the rest of the group, is you can always take a drive through pit lane. If you're doing lead follow, this is a little bit trickier. You can go through pit lane if you're worried about those cars and wanting to let them by without having to point by every single car. Just go through pit lane, let them all go by, and then tell the person that there's nothing wrong, but you just want to be sent back out where there's no one behind you. And when it's safe to do so, they'll tell you that you can drive through and merge back onto the track, and then you can focus on you, and it'll be a while before they catch up to you again. I started an RSX Type S. There were tons of Mustangs, Shelbys, Z06 Corvettes in my group. I think my first session or two, I got lapped by the same car like 3 times. I couldn't let that discourage me. It took a while, but eventually I was at the point where I was passing the Corvettes, and that's when I knew that I was ready to go to the next group. I'm not saying that's your benchmark or anything like that, but I'm just saying that I started very, very slow, and I had to humble myself, let go of any ego. So if you are that slow person, don't be discouraged. You paid money, you're there, you're entitled to that track time. The instructors, we want to help you. You know, at the end of the day, it might not be a hobby for you that you want to pursue and do a second time or a third time or continue doing for the rest of your life, but it's still an experience. We want you to be safe, we want you to learn, and of course we want you to have fun. So anything that anyone there can do to make sure that all of those things happen, you definitely just have to be vocal about it, let people know. And if you're worried about something or stressed about something, or you're just not connecting with your instructor, no one's going to take offense to that. People can rotate around and switch things up, and we just want to make it the best experience possible. I hope that these things really do help you, and they may or may not be the things that you were expecting to hear. There are, of course, other issues that I see, and these are just some of the ones that we seem to correct the most often, or that can be some of the more challenging things that we deal with. But if you have any other questions, you guys can leave a comment. I read all of the comments, and I try to get back to every single person that has a question.